Well, welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. It's Bold Friday around here.
Bold Friday! Woo, 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 woo.
We don't really know. I don't really know what that means, but
I don't either. We just made it up today, and I was told to get this shirt on.
All have our Bold shirt on.
Yeah, I pulled mine. Mine was in
which
storage.
also just I was gonna say, which also just means it's Laundry Friday for me. So
like it.
Also, just love that, like, I was trying to keep a really even keel on the intro because sometimes I feel like I'm yelling, and then you guys just came in with the beat in the chest and the screaming. So
I thought it was too low key. We got to engage the audience.
yeah, like we got to make this thing hype.
Thought we were switching to like an NPR podcast. Welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast.
Or
Just
did you ever
put
listen to
my
Delilah
just put me to
growing up.
sleep.
Have we
Delilah?
talked about this? Have we talked about this?
No, what?
Delilah was my girl growing up. Like,
I'm with you. Me
I
too.
I would put I think the difference is I was like 12 years old listening to her on my nightstand alarm clock radio,
Okay,
and you were
that's a
probably
little-
on the streets just cleaning
No.
it.
What? No, wasn't on the streets. What
I
was I
don't
cleaning?
know what.
Are we
I don't know what
recording?
that
Like,
means.
this is not good. No, you gotta kill this off now.
Oh my gosh! No, but I would fall asleep listening to her and her smooth,
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
I thought she was local. I didn't know that she was like a nationwide subsidiary or whatever.
So
I don't know. The
was-
only Delilah I know of is "Hey There, Delilah."
I think that song stems from the Delilah like radio show.
Delilah.
No, I don't know that song. It's like, "Hey there, Delilah."
No, that was
what's
that
it
was
like
Delilah's like radio intro.
Yeah. So I when I was driving all over the place. I owned a company that I had to go
on the
from city to city, and I'd listen like you're driving, and I will find this, and you will hear it, and it's amazing. Anyway,
good.
all right,
I'm
why don't we
looking
start
forward to
over?
it.
Let's start over. Let's start over.
I think it was fine.
It was fine. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast, everybody. We're joined at the table. It's Bold Friday. We got our Bold
Friday.
t-shirts on.
Bold Friday.
That's the new jingle. Welcome to
Is that-
Bold Friday. But we're joined today, like you heard from their distinguished voices. It's Austin and Eric at the table, and we're talking about an original topic. It's not one that you will know of or heard of. So today's episode is going to be twofold: us explaining it, and then us figuring out the nuances of this concept and this idea together live. Eric doesn't really know what we're talking about, and this is a concept that Austin and I put together. Oh man, a few months ago, I guess now, maybe just 2 months ago. And so, y'all ready to jump into it?
Yeah, let's go. And I know something. Austin's talked to me a little bit about this. I actually think it's a cool concept.
And and we talked about it when we were thinking of ideas for the podcast, and it came up. So, to the topic, the idea is Zone 2 leadership, and we're gonna have to lay some groundwork here for those who may be into running or athletics or cycling. But this came about whenever Austin and I both, roughly at the same time, started getting back into running in our 30s and discovered, I think Austin was more shocked than I was, that you can't run as fast as you can from your teenage years or your early 20s.
I feel like that's just such a shot at me. Like I woke up one day and was just like, "Idiot, you can't run because you're old."
You started running again, and you were frustrated that you couldn't run the same as
that is true. That is true.
as you could before. That was the reality of the situation. And you started running right after I really got back into it, and because it's my personality, I started doing all this research into how can I run better now that I'm a little older, or I've taken a large break from my teenage, early 20 years, getting back into running. What are the concepts and ideas out there to help me run long distance? So I really got into the research, and I found this idea of zone Zone 2 cardio. And like I said, for those of you who may be into running or fitness, it's probably not a new idea, but the concept is it all revolves around your heart rate and measuring your heart rate. And depending on your body weight and your age, you'll have different zones that your heart rate stays in during exercise. And I believe
this does relate with leadership at some point. Everybody just
100%. Yeah, but we got to lay a floor real quick. So you have, I think, 5 zones for running. So 1 through 5, and all as your heart rate increases and it starts working harder, then it moves up into the zones. So you can imagine for sprint work or short distance running, you're going to be in a really higher zone. And that's where a lot of people live. That's where I live when I'm running long distance. And that's why it's such a struggle for me to run long distance, is that I get gassed, I run out of breath, all the things happen. And so that's why I've never really, up until this year, made it past that like 6 mile mark. So I found Zone 2. I realized that it was all about heart rate. So I put on my watch. I started measuring my heart rate. I bought a chest strap. I did all the things to really start focusing in on Zone 2. And the whole mindset was that I want to do this so I can run longer. The hard part, and the part that almost made me give up, is that you have to, when you're starting Zone 2 training, you have to slow almost all the way down to where you're pretty much, for some people, just walking. So you go out to do a 5 mile run, you start noticing and you get your alert that you're above Zone 2 already because your heart rate's going too fast. So in order to combat that, you have to slow down. And for me, most of the time, it just meant like, okay, cool. And now I'm just walking for the rest of the time. And every time I would try to run again, then my heart rate would spike and I'd come back down. And so you go through the process of figuring out, what are my body cues? What am I doing in order to slow my heart rate and get into Zone 2? And once you achieve Zone 2, the goal, the dream, the idea is that once you hit Zone 2, your body is in a state of control over your breath, all the things that are happening while you're running. And so you can run much longer with much lower effort, so to speak. So it's way less taxing on the body. And it works. I mean, it takes a while to get through, but then, my story with it is I ran 10 miles, I stopped, and I wasn't even out of breath, and I felt good, and it was a decent pace. And that was something I'd never done before. I really, in my 30s, thought it was not really possible for me to do that without extensive, heavy, painful training. So when Austin started running, and Austin, you can tell your story here of your experience with getting into and figuring out how to do Zone 2 for your running. How was that whole experience?
It was miserable. My nickname in high school was White Lightning, man. Come on. And it's not because...
White Lightning?
Yes. It's because I was semi-tall and had really long, skinny little legs, and I ran the mile.
Pasty white.
And I'm pasty white, like paper white.
For those who haven't watched the video version,
it's real bad. So if you go back to high school, and so I'd wear these little short shorts because I thought they were cool. They were like 2.5 inches long, and literally they were 2.5 inches inseams, or down. And I would wear them, and it was funny because they would make fun of me because my legs were moving so fast. When I would finish the mile, so that's where the nickname came from. I really think it was derogatory. Like they weren't like, "Oh man, he's fast, White Lightning." It was more of a like picking on me, but I just owned it because what else am I going to do in that moment? So, but I was always fast. I was always not sprinting fast, but when it came to long distance, and so every time I've trained, I've done half marathons, ultra marathons. And I get to the same point every time.
You've done ultra marathons?
Yeah, I did a 39 miler.
What?
In 2020. And so my whole life I've done a lot of running and been a runner. But for me, it's a different season. And so what happens every single time is it's cyclical. And I'll run and then I'll get back to some semblance of shape. And then I get hurt. And then here we go again, and I get hurt, and so I've been on this health journey now since coming back from Bold, and getting to a place where I don't want to achieve quickness. I want to achieve longevity. I don't want to be hurt, and I want to have a lifestyle that constitutes this. But so me and Connor were talking about it, and he goes, man, you need to try Zone 2 running. You need to do it. You need to do Zone 2 running. So I go out.
If you want to run for the next 20 years, you got to figure out different tools to be able to sustain it. Yeah.
Which you want to talk about just misery for me. My Zone 2 was, and it was interesting. I was running, and I was like 8-minute mile pace for 5 or 6 miles.
Austin would call me. He'd be like, "Yeah, I was in Zone 5 the entire time. I ran
literally. I was in Zone 5 the entire time." And it was this idea where he's like, "I want to challenge you to go in Zone 2." And when I tell you, every single minute was exhaustingly frustrating because my ability, I could do it. Did it hurt? Was I out of breath? Yeah, I don't. But mentally, is what they teach you in early running to push past. And Eric knows this because Eric also was a runner, holds the 800-meter record to this day at his junior high school. So he knows.
He goes back every year and breaks the record again just to hold it.
I'm still I'm holding it at
still holding
51. I'm going back there and rerunning.
Beating those middle schoolers.
Yes, pretty sure that wouldn't happen.
But if you know anything about running, it's all this mental game, and it's breaking through the mental barriers, and it's going through and going beyond. And even when you're hurting or you're tired or you can't breathe, controlling your breath and pushing through it. It's that like David Goggins style. Suck the souls and make it happen is always what I grew into. But that's what he says, by the way. Like, eat their souls. And so Zone 2 totally is the opposite of that reality, where it takes more mental ability to slow yourself down than it does to push through it. Which, if you know me at all, I'm going to say, how does this respond to my life, and why as I'm struggling through the Zone 2 life, going, man, this is not just in running. Eric, I think you talk about this a lot. Like the way things show up are not just in one area of your life. They're patterns for the majority of life. And so as we're talking about Zone 2 and this stability, what I realized was I'm not a balanced individual. It is either 90 or it's nothing.
Shocking.
And yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So I'm either running and I'm running at an 8-minute mile pace or a 7-minute mile pace, or I'm working on a PR for something, or I'm not running at all. And that's in running, but you go into another place, right? In seasons of my life, it's been I either read 100 books a year or I read 0 books. I listen to a podcast a day or I listen to 0 podcasts. And so this idea of Zone 2 really was combating my internal drive of understanding what motivation is, what success looks like, and really, I don't know, I had an existential crisis, if you want to call it that, of just going, what does being driven, no pun intended for the usage there, but what is being driven, what is being motivated, what does growth look like if you're not going 90 to nothing in a specific area? Because I don't know how to do that. And it always leads to burnout for me, or injury if you're running or whatever. And so it kind of came to this place where, how do you take Zone 2 running and apply it to your life?
Well, that was the conversation. You were lamenting all of this to me because you had these revelations. And because we had just started with Driven, so obviously we're thinking about everything through the lens of leadership. And it was just like, man, like this is the idea. Like, how do you apply this Zone 2 principle to your leadership style so that you can lead people healthily all the way into your, old age of your 50s.
Swear.
But
Gosh,
so that
my
you can,
initial response involved an F and a few other letters and an off. And
no, so you can stay consistent, and so you can do it for a long time and not reach the point of like I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to go start my own company so I don't have to deal with people and work by myself for the rest of my life. Or so that's the idea. That's the genesis.
I want to. So you're talking, and all these thoughts are going through my head, and me in my teens, 20s, 30s, part of my 40s. Sometimes still now. I'm in 51 now. I look at these different stages, and I relate with what you're saying. Okay, very much. Not just the running side of it, but life side of it. This doing 100 miles an hour, doing nothing, or all those type of things. But when I look back on it, and I'm not saying this about you specifically, I'm saying this about me. I was doing it out of dysfunction, not out of function. Mm-hmm. And so what was happening, and you relate it to leadership style, is it's leading. If I'm leading out of, it's almost like I'm digging out of a hole all the time. And so I've got to do it with everything I've got, and I've got to go full board. And it's funny. I grew up, the household I grew up in was very unstable. And it wasn't that my parents didn't love me or any of that stuff. It's just that the environment that was created did not have this feeling of, man, everything's going to be great tomorrow. There could be a huge argument. There could be, I don't want to get into it, but just bad stuff can happen, you know? Yeah. And when that's there, there's a deep desire to create stability in our lives, but really it's not, we're not stable on the inside. So it never feels stable. So there's this constant drive. And then you combine that with traditional American leadership, which is go, go, go. There's always another level. There's always this. It becomes this. And for me, it was a big vacuum of a lack of significance, which is a major driver for human beings. So we have this need to either, the certainty, uncertainty. Mm-hmm. There is significance. I don't remember all of them. Tony Robbins does this really well. There's growth. So for me, I didn't feel significant. And so what that led was this need to drive all the time to be the best, or to, if I'm going to do a workout, I'm going to do the workout the absolute best that I can. I'm going to do more hills than anybody else. And I was doing triathlons, and yes, I own the junior high, middle school, 800 record. I think I still own it. I can't actually find it on the internet, but 2 minutes, 10 seconds at whatever age I was. I was very impressive. At least I had hair. That slowed me down, man. I'd like skin my head. No, I'm just kidding. But I can remember there's this one race that always sticks out in my head, and I did awesome in the race. And I was going up against this guy, and that's when I set the school record. And I was going up against this guy that, I don't know, some phenom, and the coach told me, hey, we're going to pull you out of this race because this guy's going to win anyway. We need the points somewhere else. And I was like, no, I'm taking this dude on. And so coach left me in. And I go and I run this race, and I win, and really dramatic, really cool race, broke the school record, the whole thing, right? And when I look back on that as an adult, and I'm looking back, my dad was out there, and I can just remember doing it the whole time, and just this feeling of, am I going to make my dad proud? You know, am I going to be significant to my dad? And my dad did a good job making me significant, but it still was this hole that was never filled. And so two ways I take this concept, and the reason I'm going to this place is because there's a way, if we constantly have to be in what you're calling zone 1 leadership, it's go, go, go. I'm achieving. I'm at what you're calling your zone 5, I guess is what it is, in heart rate or whatever. I don't know how we relate all these, but the bottom line, if it's go, 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 and I've got to win, and I've got to be important, and I, and whatever. Okay. And I'm not saying that's where you were, Austin or Connor. I'm just going, that space, I've been there, and it is really detrimental.
Oh my God.
Combined a couple of words there. Detrimental.
Yeah.
and you burn out. Like, you do not feel, you burn out, you crash, then you come back because you don't quit, and you keep coming back, and you go through that, and it's really unhealthy. And the end result is, when you're on an upswing and nobody's performing, we're judgmental, we're blaming, other people aren't there where they're supposed to be, or at least I was. All these things go on. So and there's more, but there's the unhealthy version of leadership there, and And what you got to do is you got to go back and you got to actually do the work on being stable in your life and heal the bullshit that happened before. And that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But the other side that I had with this is that, and it's something I strive for today, is that I'm actually striving for what you're calling zone 2 leadership. I'm striving for the day-to-day there's emergencies that pop up here and there, but there are less emergencies that I get to focus on the work that I love to do, that is stable and I can maintain it for long periods of time, that the people around me feel stable and excited to do it. And it's not this, okay, we're going to push for this mountaintop in the next 5 minutes type of a mindset, because in a long-term, building a long-term company and long-term employees, there's a whole certain group that don't have this need for this overachieving type mentality, that it burns them out. And they're usually the processors, they're usually the brilliant ones, they're the ones that bring organization and stability to the company. And where, you know, we create brand statements in some of ours. And mine, the key word, the word that I've always had in there is disruptor. That's how I like to look at myself, as a disruptor. And over the last couple of years, that's been changing. It's not that I don't still disrupt things, but Austin, I look at you, you are the best disruptor I know. You come in and you disrupt things. And when as long as you're in a healthy space doing it, it's awesome. Mm-hmm. You know, as long as stability is with it. But I think of all those leaders, and I've got several that I work with as clients that they are disruptors, but they're doing it from an unhealthy place, because they're having this need to fill, and they're having turnover. They're having frustrated employees, or they're having employees that are there that are just turning off, and they're losing the creativity. They're doing all this because it's not stable enough for them to work from. So I don't know if that's where you want to take all this, but that's the way this hit me as we were talking about it.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I mean, everything you said there is exactly it. And when you're talking about Austin being a disruptor, Austin and I have worked together for 8 years, and I know he can say the same about me, but I've seen Austin be a disruptor in a really unhealthy way. And it's been the same with me, because we both have been in those places where I think about, I saw this one when we went to Disney this past year, you know, like whenever there's schools take field trips to Disney, like if you live in the area or whatever, and everybody's holding onto the rope, so whenever you go through whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, we saw a group of these kids, so it's like 10 kids holding onto a rope, they're going through Disney, and the teacher at the front, something happened, and she was trying to shuffle everyone through very quickly before they shut the parade route down or whatever. Yeah. So she gives the rope a big tug, and there's this huge trickle down effect. And it's not a huge tug, but all the kids start tripping, losing their balance. One kid did fall, and it was a whole thing. So then she has to double back and check on everybody, and then they don't make it across. And I was like, that is, before we came up with this whole zone 2 thing, I mean, that's what you're talking about, of like, if you're in the spot of a leader where you're solely focused and you have this innate thing in you to sprint, but nobody else behind you is ready for that's not going to translate well. And you're just going to end up doubling back in your goals. Everything like that is just going to be weakened by that drive that's not being put in the right place, the right energy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think something I'm still working on today is, you know, when I was running the business, we had a really stable business. Really stable. We had 36 leaders in the company, and there was no time of the day where 3 to 4 leaders that are quality leaders were not on the floor at any given time. And so it was like, what are we supposed to do? Me and the owner would look at each other like, what do you want to do today? I don't know. What do you want to do today? This is where everybody's great. We're investing in our team. We've done the hard work. Everything's okay. And we would go in, and we've talked about this many times and had these, you know, late conversations, but we would go in and disrupt the flow to feel significant. Because exactly to your point, like, everything's running great. Well, what if we rearrange the whole kitchen? Like, why? Everything's working okay. Like, well, it could be even better. And I think it all stems from this drive to, you know, and I was actually talking to a leader this morning, and he said, like, man, like, complacency or contentment or like not moving forward is my kryptonite. And I'm going, I agree with you. And like this idea that growth and comfort don't coexist, and I have to constantly growing. So if I'm ever comfortable, then it's not okay. That it lived in my brain and working through that and going, what does, and I think this is where all the kind of questions surface is like, how do you just be? How do you just be content with where you're going, but also pursue growth? And it's so weird to say now, because I think so far so much healthier than I used to be, but there's still this desire in me to go faster and farther than what is okay for the sake of just not being comfortable.
And that's why this whole thing is really interesting. And I want to hear what Eric, you're about to say, because I know there's like that struggle between, it's like, well, we do need to grow. We do need to go farther. We do need to go faster. And like at a zone 2 pace, you are still running. And the idea is that as time goes, time is in months, not weeks, like months and years. That zone 2 pace becomes faster and faster, and you're able to run longer and longer in those stints. So we're not saying as leaders we got to hit the brakes and you got to slow down and take your foot off the gas. It's no, how do you keep the foot on the gas and it be way more sustainable for yourself and your body and your mental health and the team that is innately following behind you.
Well, and also, I mean, and just to say this, where this showed up for me was my family.
Yeah.
Because the ones that were really left behind in my pursuit for better, with that analogy of the rope, was my wife and my kids. But the reality was I never doubled back around for a long time. And I was in another park. I was sitting in friggin' Tomorrowland, and they're all back at the friggin' Dumbo ride going like, where's the damn rope? Because I'm rolling. And it's one of those things where that took the brunt of it for me. Right. Successes came, but I left a lot behind. So
I want to, you use the word contentment or content, and that's an interesting word for me because for years I looked at the word content as actually almost a failure word. Okay, so if I'm content, then I'm not doing enough, right? And sometimes that's true. We have different seasons, right? Is this a season I need to push for more? And yeah, maybe it's stable right now, but I'm going to make a leap to a different lifestyle, or I'm going to make a leap to growing myself and moving into a different career or starting a business or whatever. There's a leap there, and there's not going to be contentment in that leap, right? We're out of our comfort zone. We're being stretched. We're learning. We're all these things. But there's also space in there. When you say content, so I think a lot of people view that as almost like retirement. It's like, okay, I'm content, therefore everything's shut down. And that's not what happens and that's why I like the word stability more. When I feel stable, I can maintain this pace, this level of stress, and have a few emergencies here and there. But bottom line, I can do this for longer periods of time. And what happens in the leadership realm, not just the physical realm, it's a great analogy. When I'm in that space and I am stable and I'm not creating fires and for no reason, all these things that are unhealthy, what happens is your brain starts to go to other places. You start to create at a higher rate. You like see things more creatively. You start to see efficiencies in your actions every single day because you have time to go deeper into it. Yeah. When we're in that kind of heightened emergency state, we don't go as deep typically, not always, but typically. And we can bounce from idea to idea, or we're having to move from this fire to this fire or whatever's going on. When we're in that stable place, we're going deeper and working on things, and it makes it so, to your point, and I never really related these, Connor, till you said it this way, but it's like you stay in that place long enough, you can now accelerate, you can move faster. Everything starts to get faster, but it feels stable.
Yeah.
At least that's been my experience. And so if I'm running a business and it's stable and we're crushing it, honestly, it's so much fun. It's just a good time. It is like, wow, we're not running around terrified as to whether this is going to happen or that's going to happen. It's like, we really enjoy this. I get to put my time into enjoying the people that I work with. I get to take a day off when it applies and go be with my family, or take the trip to Disneyland and lose them at the Dumbo ride, or whatever goes on.
Yeah.
But I know we're running out of time here, but I want to latch this together. Is that this is where I think the newer generations coming in, and I know generational gap gets a lot of focus and a lot of negative attention to younger generations from generations that are in my bracket or older. Yeah. But this is where I think they really get it right, is they've got life before work in a lot of places. It's like they're going to make their life something, and they're people touring and backpacking or doing whatever, or they're working remotely and making their life happen. Well, when things are stable, that gets really easy to do. When they're not stable, then we're having to grind and push and drive. And anyway, so I love this concept. I think there's more here. I really do. I think there's more to unpack on this, but I
think anyway. For me, I think I just keep coming back to the fact that I have to unpack so much more of this, right? This is such a personal journey, not only for me, but I think in every leader, of identifying what does Zone 2 leadership look like for you? What are the things that are, because even in my own head, like as you're saying that, it's like, well, I don't have time to go on a backpacking trip because the door is closing. Right. And I think I read this as like in your 20s, you view the door as constantly closing. In your 30s, you realize the door's not really closing. In your 40s and 50s, you realize the door's wide open. Right. And it's just perspective of life shifts. Right. And it goes, well, how do we as leaders, as people in our most formative years, being our 20s and early 30s and our 40s, not see the door that way? Because to your point, I believe multiple times it has stifled my ability to be content. It stifled my ability to be a good father and husband, to be present fully, to build something worth having on the long term, and getting to a place where this thing can be for a long time. And so I really think, to your point, Eric, there's a lot more here, but for anybody out there, I would just say start reflecting on what you call successes. What is that? And really just begin to process your own relationship with balance, tension, contentment, stability, and how do you pursue better in light of those things, not in spite of those things.
Good. Yeah. So there's Zone 2. I want to leave us with, let's come back to this with a few tips, tricks, tools, how to maintain, how to achieve this Zone 2. So let's think about it. We'll come back and do another episode on that, so we can all, and you, the listener, as well. Think about this throughout the week, and we'll be back with another episode on Zone 2 and really dive into it. How do you make it practical in your life? So thanks for listening, everybody. We want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. This is a driven idea, so hit us up, and we'll see you in the next episode.